Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. We're going through chapter 11 of Bhagavad Gita, and we are up to verse 28. So today, Evanik is going to be our moderator. So Evanik, please take it away.
Sure. Welcome everyone. So our two readers are going to be David and Ambika. So David, do you want to start by reading chapter 11, 28 to 31?
Certainly. 28 to 31. Okay. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11, verse 28 to 31. Just as many currents of water from rivers flowing rapidly verily enter the ocean, similarly, all these kings of the world are entering your fiery mouths from all directions. As moths with great speed enter into a blazing fire to perish, similarly, all these armies with great speed are entering into your mouths only to perish. O Krishna, pervader of the universe, you are lapping up and devouring all these people from all directions, with your fiery mouths covered by your radiant effulgences, fearsome rays. All the universes are scorched. Please reveal who you are of such fearsome form. I offer obeisance unto you, O Lord of all, be merciful to me. I wish to clearly know you, the primeval being, because I cannot fathom your intention.
Thank you, David. Up next, we have Ambika. Ambika, are you ready to read for us? Ambika, you're on mute if you're speaking.
Yes, I will read for you, Evanik, anytime you want.
Thank you.
Shri Evanik.
Ambika, I think you went back on mute.
Oh, are you ready? I thought you were waiting
Yes.
for some people to show up. Okay, sorry.
Oh, no worries.
I just stepped away to get some water. So tell me what shlokas you want me to read.
Sure. It's chapter 11, verse 28 to 31.
Okay. Right. As the waters of rivers rushing with speed course and flow into the ocean, so do those heroes of the world of men enter into thy flaming mouths. As moths enter into the kindled flame with their increasing speed for self-destruction, so too the nations enter speedily into thy mouths for their destruction. Devouring all, thou, O Vishnu, lickest all the worlds from all ends with thy flaming mouths, filling it with burning energies. Thy fierce lusters heat the entire universe. Declare to me who thou art that wearest this form of fierceness. Salutations to thee, O great Godhead, turn thy heart to grace. I would know who thou art who wast from the beginning, for I know not the will of thy workings. Can't hear you.
So sorry, I was on mute. So your guest for, whenever you're ready, you can go.
Yatha nadinam bahavom bhuvega samudrameva bhimukha dravante tatha tavami naralokavira vishanti bhaktranya bhivijvalanti. So in verse 26 and verse 27, we have been told about how armies of both sides, the greatest, are going into the mouth of death. And that is automatic. They are just going into the mouth of death. Like life is automatic, also death is automatic. That's what Arjuna wants to point out here. He has realized that the way life is automatic, it doesn't have to be described. It is what we all know. It's just flowing from childhood to youth.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Yogeshwar, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, okay.
My apologies, everyone. That was me.
So normally when death comes, we feel that that is out of the norm. We feel that is not what is supposed to be part of life. It is an opposite of life. But rather, Arjuna here is knowing experientially for the first time that death as well is part of life. And it comes as automatic as youth comes from childhood or old age comes from youth. It is that automatic. And this has already been said by Krishna in chapter 2 when we started. But you know what happens is when something is said and when you experience it happening, when you realize that this is the truth, it is another tone of your own self. When you realize the truth, then there's something new that you realize. It's not just the words that you've heard from somebody else, but this is your experience. This is the knowledge that you now have, rather than just the words that have been gotten from somewhere else. So how Arjuna is describing this is in the same way, like any river just flows into the ocean. In the same way, all the armies, all the people, they're just flowing into the mouth of death. And that is so automatic. So here there can be two explanations for this. One is the death we know, the normal death we know that comes after old age or maybe by an accident if we're involved in one. In that case, death is as normal as life is. It is like Krishna said that like you change clothes when they become, when it's evening and then you just change the clothes because they're dirty. So it's in the same way, you change this body when death comes, and it is as usual as changing clothes. And Krishna in chapter 2 also mentioned that as youth comes from childhood and as old age comes from youth, the same way you're going to change bodies, and that is really normal. Death is going to come of this body, but you will not die. That you have to realize. Now, Krishna has given this experience not just in the words, but experientially to Arjuna. And Arjuna is saying this. So that is one explanation. Another explanation for this is our swabhava, what we are. If we leave it like the rivers flow into the ocean, in the same way, if we leave everything, then we go back to our swabhava. We go back to being the ocean. And we leave all these attachments to the body, all the attachments to the peripheral. And that is automatic. You don't have to do anything. we normally think that, oh, becoming spiritual or detaching from the peripheral is something we have to do. But we have to realize that detaching from the peripheral is what we are. It's not something to be done. And what we are, we can't do it. When we do it, we miss the point. What we are is just supposed to be left. And when it is left, it just falls back into its own position. It's like however much you throw a stone up, it will always come down. Yeah? So wherever you are, however you are, if you can just leave yourself freely, then as all the rivers just flow into the ocean, the same way you're a droplet and then you'll just fall into the ocean and become one with the ocean. And how all this is being described is, I can see that all the dvaita, all the duality of all the people in front of me is just vanishing in front of me. There's no duality. I am just seeing everything get into that oneness that I'm experiencing. And that oneness is what I'm calling death. Why Arjuna is calling it death is because your identity, as you know, dies away. It fades away. Your identity and your attachments is what gives you that I am. Death comes and then takes away your identity as you know it. So even before you physically die, if you leave it to your swabhava, if you just leave your attachments, if you just leave attachments to the body, attachments to the five senses, attachments to material things, then everything just falls back into place. It just comes back into place, and that is who you are. And in a way, that is death as well. You have died because your identity that you were relating to is gone. Now, it is not you, but it is, because wherever there is you, there's going to be another person as well. Like if there's me, then there's you. If there is no me, then there's no you. So I know where my boundaries are up to. That's why I can say after this boundary, somebody else's boundary comes in. But what we have to realize is there's nothing like that. Everything is one. Everything is the ocean. So when everything falls back to the ocean, there is no me, there is no you. So in that way, the me and you that we talk about is dying away. It's just fading away. Yatha pradiptam jwalanam patanga vishanti nashaya samruddha vega tathaiva nashaya vishanti lokas tavapi vaktrani samruddha vega. One example has already been given. Yeah? And now Arjuna is giving another example. In the same way that these small insects that come when there is rain and then they go very fast into the light. Now at that time there were no electric lights. There were only like fire lights, maybe a candle, a deep, which is in India. So what happens there is when they rush into the light, they die. It's not like these electric lights that we have right now, maybe the road lights that they would go to and they would not die into it. But what was there in the Indian time at that time were only fire lights, like a small fire that you light Maybe it's a lantern or a candle or anything at that time. So when those insects come directly rushing into the light, Jwalanam Pradiptam, and that is a fire. When they come rushing into the fire, they die. And how Arjuna has described it is Samruddha Vega. It is an increasing speed, always. Tathaiva nashaya vishanti lokas. In the same way, the whole world is just going into destruction. Where is it going into destruction? What Arjuna is saying, what I can see is just in you. They're all just becoming one into you. And it's not that they're just going slowly by slowly. They're just going so fast. So what Arjuna is experiencing here is the duality is fading away so fast that he just can't describe it. So he's saying it is as normal as rivers flow into the ocean. And it is as fast as those insects running into the light. In a way, if the example in verse 28 was not given, only the example of 29 was given, then we will think that as insects have to do something, they have to fly into the light. We also have to do something. But these two examples cancel out the defects of each other if we put them into one. So the defect of one cancels out the defect of the other. Now, what happens in the rivers flowing into the ocean, it is because we feel that the river can go anywhere, it can meander as well. Yeah. But what happens is when you get to see the light, you don't meander, it just goes directly into. And with increasing speed, the river can have slowing speeds over the terrains, up and down, going around some mountain, but that doesn't happen in this experience when you see the light. So Arjuna has seen the light. And he's saying what is happening is the whole world is collapsing into the light. As fast as all those insects just go into the light and die. So all the death is just coming all at once. And that death is leading to non-duality. It's leading to this constant oneness that is underlying everything. What you realize is when your attachment with all this dies away, then you realize who you truly are, who you've always been. And even those who have experienced, whether let it be Vivekananda or Ramakrishna Paramhans, or even those who were before that, all have said this, that after experiencing this, I have known that even before experiencing this, I was at this place. I've never left this place. Even before my birth, I've been in this place. I've never left this place. So that is the point, that is the state in which you get. The state that you've never left at all in any time. Whether let it be you've not realized it until now, but when you realize it, you'll know that I've always been in this state. It's just that it didn't get to my consciousness. It didn't get to me that this is where I have to be. This is where I have to constantly be. And the normal way of understanding this verse would be that death, as we know it, that comes at the end of life, that death, everyone is continuously running towards death. When we are born, our death is at that same time, it is destined that we are going to die. Timing may differ, anything may differ, but the only one constant that can be said when somebody is born is death is coming. And it is also, when we normally have our anniversaries or our birthdays or anything, there are two ways of looking at it. Yeah? We celebrate our birthdays with all the love, all the happiness, because we have gotten that much old. Now, in that phrase, you're saying that I have gotten this much old. Maybe I'm 7 years old. And you're saying that I am old. You're also knowing that I am going towards death, because when you get old, you're going towards death. So even the phrase you're saying on your birthday that I am 7 years old, you should realize that I am going towards death continuously. And it is as normal as rivers flowing into the ocean. It is not something that is going to happen at the end of life, but continuously I am getting old. I am moving towards death continuously. Every time a cell generates, there is a degradation of cells in the body. So that cycle is continuously on. It's just the proportion in which it happens that matters, because when a child is so young, the proportion of cells that are growing will be more, but cells are also degrading at the same time. And when a person is old, cells are going to degrade and cells are also going to regenerate. It's just that the cells that are regenerating are of a small proportion, and the cells that are degenerating have a larger proportion. So know that everything is happening, whether it's life or it is death. It is continuously happening to us. And we are also running towards death continuously. Even though we don't know it, it's just happening because it's happening so normally, like water flows towards the ocean. Or we could say that water flows towards the lower parts. Like if there is a floor that is tilted on one side, the water will just flow to that side. It is the swabhava of water. It is what water does. So that's our swabhava, to run towards death continuously. Leliyase grasamana samantal lokan samagran vadanair jwaladbhi tejo bhirapurya jagat samagram bhasastavugraha prapatanti Vishnu. So what is happening at the time of death? Yeah? I'm continuously going to keep these two strings joined. Yeah? One string is of physical death and another string is of the death of duality. The concept of duality that we have brought up in the world, the death of that. And when that death happens, the you and me that we know dies as well. So these two strings, I'm going to continuously flow with them. Wherever there is anything about death that is being said. So what Arjuna is describing here is how is death? What is death like? And what happens is what you experience as what death is happening, how death is happening. It is going to be tailored to who you are. It's going to be said by you using the words that you've known from before. You can't say new words now. Like you can only say the words you've learned from childhood. No new words. And the personality that you are going to experience it like that. because that personality is going to die. And when that dies, you'll explain it just using those words that you've known. So, Tejo Bhirapurya Jagat Samagram Bhasastavogra Prapatanti Vishnu. So what is happening here is death is Tejo Bhirapurya. Yeah? Death has just on this whole world, Jagat Samagram, on this whole world, death is just on top of it. Apurya meaning that it has just filled the whole world totally. What does it fill the whole world with? Tejo Bhi, with light. And how Arjuna's experienced it is, in a way, somebody who is a warrior would explain it and experience it. So he is experiencing everything here as death is that it is just filling the whole world with this great fire. And within that great fire, the light is so much and the heat is so much that everything is just being burnt by it. What Arjuna is saying here is everything is just going into the mouth of death automatically. Like if there's a fire, how somebody would describe it is the fire is engulfing all that it is encountering. If somebody would explain it like that, and we know fire, then we'll not be confused about how fire is engulfing something that it interacts with. We'll just know how it is done. Would not just stick to the words, but we'll know what the concept of fire means, and then we'll relate it to what engulfing something that it comes into contact with means. In the same way, we have to understand this verse, that when Arjuna is saying that with all the light and with all the heat, that teja, that death is, it is just filling up this whole world. So in the one string of physical death, we know that death is something that is destined for the whole world. So in that way, it is filling the whole world. There's no place where death cannot be. It is an automatic. And how people experience it normally is fierce, scary. It is a sort of fire that is taking you away. Physical death is described like that. Now, how it would relate to the non-duality is that death that Arjuna is describing is the unity, is the oneness. And it is so delightful. It's just so much light in there. And what is happening is when something just enters it, it just gets destroyed. It just gets out of its identity, loses its identity, and it becomes one with that light. It doesn't have a separate identity now. So in that context, you can see that Arjuna here is saying this, that all I can see here in this whole war is that everything is just in this one big unity, oneness. And everyone that I knew has just fallen or dissolved into the oneness. All the identities I knew have fallen into the oneness. And when can Arjuna say that? Is when his own identity has dissolved. Because when there is no me, there is no you. Whenever there is a me, whenever there's a boundary where I stop, then something else starts from there. For example, if just a small example here, when we have our houses, yeah, we have boundaries of our houses. So the earth is one, like there's no start and stop. It's one totally. But when we have the boundaries of our houses put into place, then we'll say this is the end of me. And when there is my house, there's going to be your house. If your boundary ends somewhere, then another's boundary will start there. So in that context, you can see that if you break down all the boundaries, it's just one single oneness. There's no duality. There's no mine. There's no yours. There's no me. There's no you. But if you build up a boundary, what you're going to say, this is my house now. And somebody else is going to build up another house next to you, and you're going to say that is his house. So whenever there is me, there is you. Whenever there is mine, there is yours. So everything has dissolved into one. Like, just imagine this earth devoid of any boundaries, and you'll see that the earth is just one. There's no division. All divisions have been made politically or individually or socially, everything. But the earth itself, nature itself, as it is, what it is supposed to be, is just one. So Arjuna now is saying to Krishna, Akhyahi me ko bhavanugra rupo namostu te devavara prasida vidyatumichhami bhavantamadhyam nahi prajanami tava pravrittim. Now Arjuna is saying, Akhyahi me ko bhavanugra rupo. I do not know you. Arjuna is saying this. Tell me who you are. Yeah. And it is also like, you know, when you're told in words, you may feel that you have known what the ultimate is. Like Arjuna is describing in chapter 10, that Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan, Purusham Shaswatam Divyam, Adi Deva Majam Vibhum. So, Sarvametad Ritam Manye. Yeah, what Arjuna said in chapter 10, that I know you, you're Param Brahma, you're Param Dhama, and I know that that is all right. Everything is there. So Arjuna there, he himself, he knew that I know all these words. Everything has come upon me through Krishna. But Arjuna asked for more. He asked for, how should I know you? And Arjuna here, despite of saying those words in chapter 10, that I know you as this. Now Arjuna is rephrasing his question again, that tell me who you are now. I do not know you now. All the words that I have collected since, they do not have any meaning now. They've all run out of meaning. What Arjuna here is now saying is, Namostu te devavara prasida. Why would you tell me? Yeah? One thing is, I am bowing down to you, seeing your greatness, seeing the oneness that you've always been in, seeing the state that you are in. I bow down to you. And have all those blessings showered on me. Prasida. So after having all those blessings showered onto me, then tell me, Vigyatumichhami bhavantamadhyam. Why should you tell me? Because I want to know. Vigyatumichhami. I want to know you. I want to know who you are. You've told me with words. You've told me with everything. You've even tried to tell me in chapter 10 that in this, you can see me as this. I have used all the words that can describe you, even in chapter 11. But now I feel that I still do not know you. I still want to know you, who you truly are, experientially who you are. And why do I want to know? It is because until now, I have not known you. Nahi prajanami tava pravritti. Because you've shown me this experience, all the words that you told me before, I've realized I did not understand them in their real context, as they were supposed to be understood, as you meant them. Because Krishna was continuously telling Arjuna, you are this, you're supposed to do this, this is your karma. And Arjuna was saying, yes, I know I am this is my karma, but still there is this. And now experientially, Krishna has shown Arjuna who he is. Arjuna now is realizing that everything that I was conceptualizing before was wrong. What is supposed to be done is just go in without all your concepts. Just let all your concepts fade away and go into the reality. When you dive into reality like that, you really know what reality means. You really know what life means. And you really know what death means.
Thank you. Thank you, Yogeshwar. If anybody has any questions or any comments, you can type exclamation mark in the chat, or you can raise your hand in Zoom. Starting with Shrikant.
Thank you, Avanik, and thank you, Yogeshwar. I want to read the 31 verse, the verse 31 from Sri Aurobindo's translation. And Aurobindo explains what Arjun is doing here in verse 31. Declare to me who thou art that wearest this form of fierceness. Salutation to thee, O thou great Godhead. Turn thy heart to grace. I would know who thou art, who was from the beginning, for I know not the will of thy workings. And here, Aurobindo is commenting on the word declare. So what is it that Arjuna is asking for? This last cry of Arjuna indicates the double intention in the vision. This is the figure of the supreme and universal being. This is he who forever creates. For Brahma, the creator is one of the Godheads seen in this body. He who keeps the world always in existence, for he is the guardian of the eternal laws, who is always too destroying in order that he may anew create. Who is time? Who is death? Who is Rudra, the dancer of the calm and awful dance? Who is Kali with her garland of skulls, trampling naked in battle and flecked with blood of the slaughtered Titans? Who is the cyclone and the fire and the earthquake and pain and famine and revolution and ruin and the swallowing ocean? And it is this last aspect of him which he puts forward at the moment. It is an aspect from which the mind in men willingly turns away and ostrich-like its head, so that perchance not seeing it, may not be seen by the terrible. The weakness of the human heart wants only the fair and comforting truths, or in their absence, pleasant fables. It will not have the truth in its entirety, because there is much that is not clear and pleasant and comfortable, but hard to understand and harder to bear. To put away the responsibility for all that seems to us evil or terrible on the shoulders of the semi-omnipotent devil. No, I'll stop here. I think this captures it. It's saying that Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh are part of this. And in the last part, you're seeing Shiva, you're seeing the god of destruction. And that is integral to being born again. That destruction is a natural part of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Shrikant. Yogeshwar, do you have anything to say before I go to the next person?
No, it's fine.
Okay, thank you. Up next, I have Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this, in a way, I often think about some of my Stoic principles as well when I'm reading the Gita. But this kind of relieves us of the fear of death, which is very important to do on a number of different levels. But it does this in a much deeper way. It fears us like that. Now we can free ourselves from externals, the periphery. We're no longer managing ourselves. And this destruction is actually a way of, it's liberating. Once we see it as integral to being part of human life, then we can actually start to live. And we start to see the meaning in things, so that this cycle that we're going through is critical to creating meaning in many ways. So I think that this puts it in the format of story that makes it much more apparent and much more palatable, if you will, for me personally. So yeah, overcoming our fears in general, it allows you also to overcome all of your other fears. It's not just your fear of death. It's the liberation that comes along with all the other things that we then fear. You start to look at things completely differently if you look at life in cycles, and you started to look at life like a journey. So anyway, I'm going to let Shrikant go.
Yep, Shrikant, you wanted to comment?
I just want to comment on what Joe said. I think that's a great connection, because it's very interesting to see the same function being served in these two very different philosophies. In Stoicism, in Stoic practice, there is this preparing your mind for the worst and accepting that this can happen and this can happen. Like when you first encounter it in today's context, you'll say, why are you doing this? Why are you putting yourself through it? But it is all about accepting reality as it is. And what that does is that it allows you to accept reality as such, nature of life as such, and it frees you up to actually act from the core of your being without this unnecessary fear of things that you cannot control. So a great point, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, Shrikant. Up next, I have Rupali. And if anyone else wants to comment, you can either type exclamation point or raise your hand in Zoom. Rupali, you're up next.
Thank you, Ebony. I'm going to piggyback on what Joe said, that this is a journey, and life and death are part of that journey. So I've mentioned this before, how I witnessed my mother-in-law's passing away, and she never looked at it as her self. Her last words were, I'm one with the universe. So at that time, I really didn't understand. But Yogeshwar's explanation today, that duality is gone, and she was in unity with the one. It dawned upon me that that's what she was saying. And I must say, having experienced when that acceptance of death is there, how peacefully one can be at that stage, in that state, that she left with a smile. She closed her eyes. There was no trauma at all to her body, and everybody in the room was chanting Om. So when Yogeshwar said, at that time, you remember the words. We talked about this a few weeks ago when we talked about what does remembrance mean. And it's not just remembering the words or from memory, but also remembering who you are in that moment when physically you're going to not exist anymore, and accepting that and saying, Om, I'm one with the universe. So I would say that I have watched it and I feel like, yes, she is on her journey. So, Joe, thank you for that metaphor. Thank you, Evanik.
Thank you, Rupali, for all those words. Up next, I have Ambika, followed by Joe.
Hi, so when Yogeshwar was talking about, we are born and we are racing towards the death, what I started to see was it's a wave. It's all together at once, at all times, in everything. It's that whole thing. Every breath, expire, inspire. Every breath is part of the whole process. And I've so many people who, when they pass on, and especially when they have a like a near-death experience, they always end up seeing light. And that made me curious because of the shloka that Yogeshwar just explained to us. That light that they see, and then beyond that is just the nothingness of the all of it and all of it. And I know some people, when they're nearing it, they stop eating or drinking anything because they know it's coming. And my grandmother did that. She wouldn't touch anything for about 9-10 days. And I'm curious about that. I'm sure Yogeshwar knows what to share with us. I'd love to know. Thank you.
Yogeshwar, you want to make a comment?
Yes, so myself, I've never had a near-death experience like that, like physical death. But what I can say is there is a light beyond, and that light is that of oneness. When you fall into that light, it's just like how fire just takes into itself everything that falls into it. It just engulfs everything into itself, and it makes it one with itself. In the same way, that happens. And even people who have had this experience of enlightenment, they'll always say, there's a light there. And it's not only metaphorically a light there, in a way that we should run away from this dark material world and then walk into the light. It's just not for that. It is an experience that you get. Like, there is a truth into it. It is metaphorical, but there is a truth into it, that there is a light there. When you reach the boundary, you see a light there. And it's not just for telling others that you should go into that light, like light is good and darkness is bad. It's not just for that, but it is experiential. And when they experience that, they write it down, or the people who come after them write it down. So that is experientially true. Not only that you're telling other people, just so that they can go into that light.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. Up next, I have Lionel, followed by Joe. And if anyone else wants to speak, you can type exclamation point in Zoom, in the chat, or raise your hand in Zoom. Lionel, you're up. Lionel, you have to unmute yourself. Oh, wait. There you go.
Okay, yes. Yeah. I was curious to know when we speak of the self getting dissolved in death into the all or the universal. I mean, I was just curious though, we will all lose our identity. Will we be conscious of our former selves, who I was? Would I be aware I was Lionel? Now I'm transformed into some other celestial being? Or will I recognize my parents, my siblings, or other near and dear ones whom I have known in this life? It's just curiosity. I mean, how does the Gita give insights into this aspect? Will we be a new community, knowing one another, or will we just be completely dissolved, unconscious into some totality? Any clue on that?
So yes, what I would say is normally that's how it's viewed. Okay. Normally that's how it's viewed, that when you go into this oneness, there is nothing else that you think about. And what I am talking about is this, you going into this oneness when you're alive. And when you're alive and this happens, then like Krishna, you'll have all these relations. See, he kept his relation with Arjuna as a friend, with all the relations, and he kept his relations with so many wives that Krishna himself had. He had so many sons and daughters, all that. He was a king as well. So all that happens. What dissolves is your attachment to it. What dissolves is your identity to it. For example, when you identify yourself as rich, when you become poor or when you're stripped of your identity of richness, then you feel your half, like there's something that has been pulled from under the ground. So that doesn't happen to such a person because his identity is not rich or poor. His identity is not, I am the wife of so-and-so, or his identity is not that I am the king of this particular state. His identity is not, I am a teacher of so-and-so. His identity is what dissolves. He himself, as his physical body is here. It stays. And its physical body will, you're just joined with your physical body as somebody who would use a car. Like you just use a car, you can drive it or you can stop it anytime you want. As we are right now, when we say, like, when we tell our thoughts to stop, they will start at a higher rate. So we don't have that control over anything in our body, nor our thoughts as well. So in that way, what enlightenment does is when you want thoughts to stop, they stop. Like when you want a car to stop, it stops. When you want to drive it, it drives. The direction you take it into, it goes. But right now, the type of knowledge that we have, it's like the world is just pulling us towards itself rather than us driving the body, us driving what we have in our control. So all that control comes in.
I have a question, Yogeshwar. So is it the identity that is it the identity from the periphery? Is that what dies, but we keep the core?
Yes, that's the identity that dies.
Okay. Up next, Joe. Thank you for being patient, Joe.
No, thank you. No, there's something that that just goes with this theme overall, and it's kind of learning. I see this as a process, as also learning how to die. And once you kind of learn how to die, that is kind of critical to another aspect of, and Srikant's diagram actually reminded me of this. It's the importance of courage in that process, because if you don't necessarily accept your death, then you have this fear of death, and that you're basically then unwilling to you're unwilling to you're acting almost as a slave, I would say, to whatever is existing in this world, and you're kind of holding on to whatever exists. And then if you're acting like that, you're acting kind of cowardly in a way, because you're holding on to forms and things that are attachments. So by understanding the journey of death and accepting it, it allows you to be, at least pursue the virtue of courage. So anyway, that was a thought.
Thank you, Joe. Up next, we have Brian.
So I appreciate what everyone has said. I want to share, I'm not sure it's an insight, but it's a thought I have sometimes. And that is that non-attachment also includes the concept of finality. In other words, as regards events and things you've done and who you were, even the things that you did when you were, I don't know, I think about myself, the things I did when I was 5 or 10 or 20, even the things I did yesterday, they're kind of over and done. It's over. So let it go. It's finality. That's finality in the context, or non-attachment in the context of time. And and if you can if you could be non-attached to who you were when you were 10, you know, in some ways that 10-year-old has in your mind, a 10-year-old has died. You don't have to be like that. You are no longer that person. You are no longer doing what that person did. It's over, and that person is over and done. That was yesterday. And and so it is with, I think it's, you know, that's true of all, you know, through all of life. If you want to hang on to it, you're not really hanging on to the reality. You're hanging on to a memory at best. You know, and there's nothing you can do about that. All you can hang on to is the memory. And also looking forward, nobody knows when they're going to die. So why leave? I'm not leaving anything undone, because I know, you know, because I'm certain of the day of my death. I'm doing things, you know, in a normal fashion as they progress. So when I die, I'm not going to say, oh, I saved up all these things for when I die. That's not happening. So I don't see my death as being you know, a lot of things happening on the day I die. I think I see a lot of things happening the day before, you know, the days before I die. And they will all also have, once they're done, they're over and done. There's a finality. I can try to be attached to it, but the most I've got is a memory.
Thank you, Brian. Penny, did you want to say something?
Yes. I was very moved by Rupali's story, so I just thought I would give you mine maybe isn't as dramatic, but 2 years ago, my mother died and her lungs were failing. I flew to see her. Her sister came with her niece and, she said she was ready to go. So, and she was on a respirator and the doctor said they couldn't even take her off the respirator. She couldn't even eat. As soon as they took her off, she started not having enough oxygen. So, definitely was time, but she said she was ready. So that morning I got my phone and Facebook and everybody who couldn't be there, my son and daughter and different people, we all called them and held it up so they could kind of say goodbye to, grandma or their mother, whoever it was. And then we all gathered, my sister, a couple of my nieces, who are my mother's granddaughters, her sister, her niece. And so we said, like, basically it was time. We all said kind of our last things and we took the mask off. And my mother said, oops. Anyway, she said, it's starting now. And that was the last word she said. And then we all, sang songs and just tried to say meaningful things while she died. But it was interesting that that's what she said. It's starting now.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Penny. I really appreciate that, and I'm sure everybody here does too. It's such a beautiful story, and I know it's sad and beautiful all at the same time. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. I really appreciate it. Up next, I have Jyoti, followed by Shrikant.
It's my turn now?
Yes.
Okay. I have this question, and this has happened to many people. They before people die, they call their biological family members, their siblings, their parents. And why is that? Why do they go back to their family and why they call them? Anybody has any answer for that?
Does anybody want to answer that? Yogeshwar, I don't know if you heard the question. If not, I can have Jyoti repeat it.
Yeah, if I could get the question again.
Okay, my question is, dying people call, they ask for their biological family, and their siblings, their parents. And why so? It's not only with one person, with many people who are dying.
Yogeshwar, or does anybody else want to?
So what I would like to say about that is that, normally there is that connection that we have when we have the identity with the body. And that identity is not yet gone for us. When that identity is fading away, there is that fear that we have. There is that, like if my identity is dying, if my relations are dying, you normally, when something is going away from you, you remember it more. So for a person who has not yet reached that state of enlightenment, or a normal person, as we all are, we normally have that connection. And as we know, even in our minds, that when something goes away from us or is about to go away from us is when we instantly attach too much value to it, psychologically itself. Like, it may not have that much value during your life, But when you are being detached from it, or when you're going to lose it, then it instantly gets so much value in your mind. And that value is what makes you cling to it back. Like you can't leave it. That is why normally people would call for their loved ones, is because they don't want to go away from here. It's like they want to stick to the identity of their body. They always want this identity to be, not to leave it.
But why not their loved ones who are in the present life? Why not them? Why go back to the biological family?
Yes, so there's also this thing about, there's that bond that you've gotten into. You know, consciously, you may only think that the bond is only up to what I know consciously is up to. But your bond in your unconscious mind is so entangled with what you know consciously and what you also don't know consciously, which is in your unconscious mind, so in your subconscious mind. And that is continuously being toggled upon when you're losing your identity, because you're going to lose identity of both, or everything you know, whether it's conscious, unconscious, everything. So what happens is, what you have valued consciously, you've valued it. But what you've not valued consciously, like it has been in your subconscious and secretly you value it, like in the depths of your mind, you value it. So all that comes back. It's like the whole of it, like conscious and unconscious at the time of death, it all becomes one. There's no conscious, unconscious. It is all in one pack. So when it comes in one pack, you may feel that this is illogical, but it was always there in your unconscious mind. And that, when it comes back, you feel like that biological attraction towards what your identity came from, or who you knew first when you knew your identity. All that comes back.
Thank you. Thank you, Vibhisha.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. Up next, I have Shrikant, followed by Ambika. I'm sorry, Shrikant, followed by David, Ambika, and Brian.
Thank you, Evanik. I want to follow up on Joe's comment about fear. I think that the notion of fear is a very deep idea here, because if you look at this chapter 11, Arjun is moving through that fear. He's seeing the destruction at a massive level, and he is full of fear of that. So, you know, if you look at like Louis Sullivan that we discussed, and yesterday we were talking about, he uses the word evanishment of fear, getting rid of the fear as being a crucial part of living genuinely. Because if you are living from the core, it is motivated by love. Fear is yours being afraid to lose something that you have. It is another name for actually attachment. It is, the function at the core of your being is creating forms. If you get attached to the forms, you're afraid to lose them. And that is the root of fear, because in that fear is contained a very low view of yourself and low view of nature. You're saying, no, the nature is not powerful enough to keep creating and go through these cycles of creation, sustenance, and destruction. Let me hold on to this one thing that I have. So I think the point about fear is a very deep one. Thank you.
Thank you, Shrikant. Up next, I have David, followed by Ambika and Brian.
I mean, given Jyoti's very moving comments and questions. I mean, this is sort of a combination between exploring the Bhagavad Gita and exploring questions about life and death and the future. I mean, not trying, or try to express this in a way that maybe aligns, and people can say that I'm completely off, going too far, since I'm not an expert in Hinduism. But as we've discussed, that we are all everything. I mean, with the Brahma, and that at the time of death, it's we're still somewhat conscious. We still are trying to map the experience that we're going through into things that we understand. So this question of reaching out to relatives who are deceased is, as we're starting to pierce that veil, to be able to have our minds try to map that understanding of what we're experiencing of all of these entities and all of this everything of Brahma into something that we can understand. And so mapping that into these relatives, into these people in this experience, that we're reconnecting with all of that. So yeah, maybe that's trying to put too much of a Hindu spin on it, but there's a lot of discussion about what people experience as they're going through that journey, and that seeing relatives, and maybe in the sense of the best way that that the mind at that time is able to understand this experience of everything, that as to try to map this to the Bhagavad Gita, that and with that Brahma is everything, it's life and death in all people, all things, and that this overwhelming experience of the light is best able to be experienced, or Brahma is helping to, or I mean, I shouldn't say, whatever religious being you want to express it is helping the person to understand that in a representation they can better experience, or more calmer with, in terms of the love, the experience they're going to have with relatives that they have passed on, and they're helping them across that bridge. So that's all I'll say.
Thank you, David. Up next, I have Ambika.
I just wanted to say a little bit about what Penny said about it's happening, that it felt like she was experiencing that whole process of going into the next dimension. And I think this is what takes you to the light. But the finality and the reality of that showed me how even in our daily lives, we could let go of things, because this felt like a conscious releasing. And to consciously go into that seems also to me to be a gift of some sorts to everyone else around, to journey with, in a way. So thank you.
Thank you, Ambika. Up next, I have Brian.
Yes, what I wanted to say also picks up on a word that Ambika used, which is a gift. I accept and agree with what everyone else has said about wanting to be with others when you die. When I think about dying, I think, well, that's gonna be a gift that I can also give to my children and other people around me, as I can die with dignity, and they can see me dying with dignity. They may not be there when I die, but in the way death tends to occur now, at least in my family in the United States, is you have this old age and illness, and people start to anticipate death in real terms. And my parents did that with dignity, and I expect that was a great gift of them to me, and I'd like to pass on that gift to my to my family, to my children, and my beloved, since I figure she's going to outlive me. I hope she does. And and I think that's just, for me, that's another part of it.
Thank you, Brian. So up next, we're going to move on to chapter 11, verses 32 to 35. David, do you want to read first, followed by Ambika?
Certainly. So, verse 32. Lord Krishna said, I am terrible time, the destroyer of all beings in all worlds, engaged to destroy all beings in this world. Of those heroic soldiers presently situated in the opposing army, even without you, none will be spared. Therefore, arise for battle, O Arjuna. You will gain fame by conquering the enemy and enjoy a flourishing kingdom. All these warriors have been slain already by me. Due to previous design, you are merely the instrument. Slay Dronakaira and Bhishmadeva and Jayadratha and Karna also. All the warriors bent on fight are already slain by me. Do not be distressed. Just fight, and you will surely conquer your enemies in battle. Sanjaya said, hearing this instruction from Lord Krishna, Arjuna, trembling with folded hands, offered humble respects with a very fearful heart, and again offering obeisances, spoke unto Lord Krishna in a faltering voice.
Thank you, David. Up next, we have Ambika. Ambika, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Okay.
No worries.
The blessed Lord said, I am Kal, time spirit, huge risen for the destruction of the world, intent on devouring the peoples here as my will in my workings. Even without thee, all these warriors ranked in the opposing armies shall not survive. Therefore do thou arise, get thee glory, having conquered the enemies, enjoy thou an opulent kingdom. By me verily are all these already slain. Do thou become the occasion only, O Savyasachin, Arjuna. Slay thou by me who was slain Drona and Bhishma and Karna and Jayadratha, as well as other hero fighters. Be not pained and troubled. Fight, thou shalt conquer the adversary in the battle. Sanjaya said, having heard these words of Keshava, Sri Krishna, Arjuna, the man of crown, trembling and with his hands clasped, saluting again, fear-struck and bowing down, spoke to Sri Krishna in faltering tones.
Thank you. Yogeshwar, you're up.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kalosmi Lokakshayakrit Pravriddho Lokan Samahartumiha Pravritta Rite Pitvam Na Bhavishyanti Sarve Yeva Sthita Pratyanikeshu Yodaha. Krishna is telling Arjuna, this is me. What you're seeing in front of you, what you're experiencing is me. There is everything that you're experiencing, whether it is from the start of chapter 11, where Arjuna started describing that you have so many arms and you have so many feet and you have so many faces. Whichever direction I see, I only see you. And until the end, where Arjuna is describing Krishna as that which is death, that which takes everything away from what you really know. So what Krishna is saying here now, Kalosmi, I am Kala. What am I doing? Loka kshaya krit pravritta. I am constantly working on the destruction of the whole world. Lokan samahartu miha pravritta. And that is continuously happening. So if you even look at nature, nature is constantly on the move. It's always changing. There is nothing that is constant. So in that way as well, we can see that what the ultimate is, what the unmanifest is, how we can look at it is even looking at nature, that which is always moving. It's always constantly changing. And that change, it is made of both destruction of what is and creation of what will be. And here Arjuna is realizing, because normally he would take the ultimate to be only creation. Now, when he has realized that not only creation, as I was describing at the start, but destruction as well, the destructive force is the ultimate as well. In his own mind, it is so deep that I have to describe this because I have known it now. I had known the ultimate as creation, but now I am knowing the ultimate as destruction. So that is of value to me. If I say it out, then I know that I have known Krishna. Like if I can put into words, then I can tell Krishna what I'm saying, what I'm realizing new about the ultimate. When Arjuna is having that experience, Krishna is also listening to Arjuna. What type of experience are you having? What type of state are you in? When Arjuna is in that fearful state, then Krishna is saying that, yes, I am that. What you've described, it is what I am. There's nothing else apart from that. Because Krishna is looking at the state of Arjuna and saying, that state in which you are in, I am also that. I am that destructive force. Ritepi tvam na bhavishyanti sarve yeva sthita pratyanikeshu yodha. Even without you, whether you are or you are not, what has been already destined will happen. Everyone in front of you, whether it is on the side of the Kauravas or it is on your own side, the side of the Pandavas, everything, whatever is going to be destroyed is going to be destroyed. And whatever is going to be created is going to be created. So even without you, all these people that you know are not going to be. All those people in the war that you know are not going to be. So why worry? Why are you so scared about it? It is something that should happen and is happening. So don't, normally what happens is, even when we are clinging to something of our senses, of our five senses, we cling to it. And we should understand this, that when we cling to something, it is our doing. It is not our swabhava. It is not who we are. When we leave all the attachments, when we leave all those clings, living in a way is not an action. It's just living it free. So when you live it free, you go back into your Swabhava. You go back into who you are. Then you realize that this is who I am. And whenever we have our identity ruling or our identity controlling us, then we'll have all these decisions to make. We'll have all these, whether this is right or this is wrong. We'll have all this that according to the past experiences that I've had, all the thoughts that I've had, all the intellect that I have, I am going to always look at the future with all the past that I have, with all the intellect, with all the mind, in a way, until you get to that state, until you get to that experience. That is not bad at all, because that's how you know the future. But when you step into that experience that Krishna is showing Arjuna, that changes completely. You are now in the present as you are. You're not in the past, you're not in the future. When you go into the future is when you need the past. But when you're in the present, you neither need the past nor the future. So everything is now. What you have to think about is what is. And what is the ultimate. That is who you are. Whatever energy that is left, karma will happen. And that karma, which is automatically happening from the center, without you interfering with it, without your identity interfering with it, without your ego interfering with it. That is the real karma that Krishna is talking about. And when Krishna is saying, Ritepi Tvam na bhavishyanti sarve, normally how it would be taken is if Arjuna was out of the equation, Krishna would still have this done. But how I see this is Ritepi Tvam. Now that Tvam is the identity that Arjuna has. It is what Arjuna is clinging to. It is that ego that Arjuna is clinging to. It is the bodily identity, the material identity that Krishna is pointing out here, that even without that bodily identity, remove it from the equation. What will happen is action flowing from the core of your being. And when that happens, when action is flowing from the core of your being, then that is the right action. Normally, we say right or wrong based on our social norms, based on our individual norms, political norms, or what experience we've had in the past. But what we have to understand here is whether it is good or bad in that context. Yes, that good and bad exists when we're interacting with the world. It should be there. And that is how we shall always interact with the world. What we have to understand here is leave your identity. And Krishna here is saying that when that identity is left, is when you will have the true karma, which is from the core of your being. Because right now, whether you're doing good or bad, if it is not from the core of your being directly, if your identity and your ego is interfering with the karma, then that karma is not correct. It's not the truth. What the truth is only the karma that happens when it is flowing from the core of your being, when it is flowing from inside. And in that state, it is that action that happens with inaction. It is that action that happens without even feeling like you're doing any action. It is what Krishna said in chapter 2, Karmanya karma yaha pashyam. Those who see the karma in the akarma, and those who see the akarma in the karma. Those who can see that Arjuna or Krishna, like Arjuna after this in the war, or Krishna all this time, has been doing karma in our eyes. But that karma is actually akarma. It is not karma as we see it. Like, it is not what is determining what they're doing. That karma is like flowing from the core of the being. And so it is like akarma. It is akarma. It is not like the action that we normally know. It is some other sort of action. It is that other type of action that flows from the core. No energy is needed for that. It just flows through you. Tasmat tumuttishta yasho labhasva jitva shatrun bhungshva rajyam samriddham mayaivaite nihata purvameva nimitta matram bhavasavya. What Arjuna is being told here by Krishna is, stand up now. Get your bow and arrow. What you have to do should just flow from the core of your being, the center of your being. What will happen after that, whether it is you getting all this wealth after all these people in front of you have been defeated, that's fine. It's okay. And don't be worried about it, because that's going to come. Don't get worried about what is going to come. What has already happened is Mayai Vaite Nihataha Purvameva. I have already destroyed everything. Like, everything is already being destroyed. What you have to do is Nimitta Matram Bhava Savyasachi. What you have to do is just be the instrument. Just be. And when you just are, then action will flow from the core of your being. What Krishna is saying here is, just become that flute. That when nature, or when the ultimate, when the unmanifest blows through you, it is the tune of the unmanifest that blows through you. Don't become a distraction within the flute. Just be that hole, that space in the flute. And when you become that space, the spacious flute, then whatever tones that are being played from you, they're not of the identity that you are clinging with, but it is of the ultimate. It is of the unmanifest. And all those tones just run through you. They may be shown by action, but that action is that inaction. That action is made up of that inaction. And when you get that, you realize that it is the unmanifest that has always been working through me. It's just that I have been blocking the way with my identity, with my decisions, with my past, and have not allowed it to flow through me. When you allow the ultimate to just make its tunes through you, who is the flute, then you realize that those tunes are actually sweeter than anything you can make. Nimitta matram bhavasavyasachi. Dronam cha bhishmam cha jayadratham cha karnam tathanyanapi yodha viran maya hatanstvam jahima vyathishta yudhyasva jeta sirane sapatnan. What happens is, when we normally read these verses, we feel that, oh, if Krishna is saying that people have already died Like whether it is Drona, Bhishma, or Karna, Jayadratha, they've already died. There is no, there's no way of killing them. So what I should do is just kill them. Now, if we take it in our context, when we are too attached with our identity, what we get out of that verse is like, is Krishna trying to talk about mass destruction and saying that that's fine? Is Krishna telling Arjuna that it's fine whether people die or they live, whatever they do, just kill them because they're already dead, And we instantly realize that, Gita has been with the Hindu religion for all this time. But nobody in the history of Gita has put these shlokas, has put these verses into context of that mass destruction is okay, or that Krishna is telling Arjuna that, oh, just go into the war because everybody is already dead. Just fight because you just have to fight with your identity as it is. What Krishna is ultimately telling Arjuna here is that leave your identity aside, leave everything that you know aside, let the ultimate flow through you, then only the truth will happen. And what Krishna is telling Arjuna here is everyone is already one with the oneness. Everyone is just in the oneness. If you are acting from the oneness, that is the condition. If you are acting from the oneness that I am showing you in front of you, that you have realized in chapter 11, don't just take these verses as they are. They are part of a big context, something that Krishna started from chapter 2, and something that Arjuna has realized in chapter 11, that experientially something is one, like there is a oneness between everything. Even saying a oneness between me and the world, then I would put duality in words. But like it's just oneness that is. There's no me and you. There's no Drona and Bhishma and Jayadratha. Everyone is just in that oneness. And let action happen through you. Like the ultimate blowing the tunes through the flute. Sanjaya Uvacha Etat Shrutva Vachanam Keshavasya Kritanjalirvepamana Kiriti Namaskritva Bhuya Eva Krishnam Sagadgadam Bhita Bhita Pranamya. Arjuna is telling Dhritarashtra that after this happened, after Arjuna has realized who Krishna is, who the ultimate is, and what the ultimate is, then Arjuna is realizing this, that after Krishna telling me all these words, yeah, all I can do is just as that small seedling that may be in the middle of a river, or that water weed that is within the river. When the river flows, the water weed just flows with it. And if there is a plant at the shores of the river, that seedling will just flow with the river. It will flow in the direction the river is placing towards. In that same way, all I can do is like that seedling bows down. But you see, it's not doing any action. It is an automatic thing that happens. So in that same way, Arjuna is in this position that he's saying that I can't say any words now. What I can do is Kritanjali, fold my hands. Namaskritva bhuya evaha. What Arjuna is doing here is just bowing down, and normally would feel like bowing down is like Arjuna would have to do an action. But what I'm trying to get to is, it is this automatic reflex that happens when a seedling is at the shore of the river and it just bows down in the direction that the river is flowing. Or if you could take the example of a flag, that flag just moves in the direction the wind is blowing. It doesn't have its own direction that it should flow. When we lose our identity, we become something like that. We just flow with the wind. Whichever direction the wind blows us, we just blow. And that is the bowing down. It happens automatically. Bhuya eva ha Krishna, sagad gadam bhita bhita pranamya. Here, Arjuna is having all these feelings together. He is Kiriti, meaning that he is wearing the crown. He is wearing this big crown. And when you're wearing a crown and you have that identity of the crowned prince, then bowing down is like leaving. What you have to do basically is leave your identity aside, leave all your ego aside, and then the bowing down is automatic. So that is what is happening with Arjuna. He is just realizing the ultimate as it is and accepting it. I accept what reality is. And to do that, it is the greatest and the most courageous deed to happen. Because normally we would want to hide behind the curtains of what we already know, or behind the curtains of our intellect, or behind the curtains of our mind. What our mind projects is true for us. Now, when our mind is shuttered, when our intellect is shuttered, to accept what is without the blindfolds of our intellect, or without the curtains of our intellect, that is courageous. To accept reality as it is.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. So now it's time for questions and comments. If anyone has a question in the comment, they can type exclamation point in chat or raise your hand in Zoom. Joe.
So one of the things that there was this is like one of the deepest parts that I'm taking away, actually, and I have a lot to digest with this, because I thought about this idea of duty quite a bit, and I kind of, somebody actually challenged me about a week ago based on this, is that they said that they were, kind of, and I couldn't defend it properly, but that the Gita didn't speak to them because they felt like there was this idea of duty, and that in a war situation, so that this didn't necessarily that was very difficult for them to handle. But I think this explanation that you gave me this evening actually helps me understand that in a greater context. So I appreciate that. The idea of the action flowing from your core, and I see the idea of karma yoga within that. But what about this? It's this idea of jnana yoga as well, because it's like an applied understanding that you're actually flowing from the center, that it's knowledge, it's wisdom, and it's knowledge, it's applied knowledge. So is that also appropriate? Like, because I know that you mentioned karma yoga, and I was thinking that as well. This, the idea of self-service and how that flows in with everything else. But does jnana yoga? I mean, I'd imagine it does, unless I'm way off.
So there are two ways of looking at all the paths. Yeah, one way of looking at karma yoga or jnana yoga or bhakti yoga in that context, taking all the paths, is somebody who is from where he is, from the peripheral, is moving towards the center, using the path. Now, there is another context of bhakti yoga and jnana yoga and karma yoga. The other context is when you are at the center, what happens in the context of karma yoga or jnana yoga. So when you are at the center, all paths meet at one point. There's no distinction between them, because what the path was for you to get to the center. When you're at the center, all paths, whether you call it 3 or 18 or however many that you would like to distinguish, they all meet at one point. When they meet at one point, there's this one continuous thing that happens. It is that because you've realized the center is the jnana yoga. And then the karma is what flows from the center automatically. Yeah. And the bhakti is just you coming back to the center. And that is for the context of a person who has reached the center. When you are not at the center, what happens is you are moving towards the center using that one path that you have been told or that you devour to. And when you're moving towards that, all the paths will feel like they are distinguished. They are, if I am walking from the west, that path is walking towards the east. It's like that distinguishing. But when it all becomes one at the center, then you realize that karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and jnana yoga, they're not different. It's just flow of life. And that's how it happens.
Can I just say really quick follow-up? No, I want to thank you for that, because that actually brings more context to the idea of what we talked about a few nights ago, is that there's a number of ways to get to the center, but the process by actually breaking out and how karma yoga allows you to act in the world. I'm starting to see that process. So that almost is what we've covered here, and Shrikant probably I can speak to it better than myself, but this idea of Louis Sullivan, or the outside of, you get to your core so that you can act in the world, and it's breaking in so you can break out. So that's the idea where not karma yoga allows you to act in the world with the idea of service, but you're thinking about self at first. But then we thought about a number of ways to get to the center as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Yogeshwar. Up next, I have Rupali, followed by Jyoti.
Thank you, Evanik. So this section reminds me of kindergarten chats. And, so the book has about 52 chapters. It has 52 chapters. And somewhere around the middle, the student starts to transform. And this whole chapter 11 just reminded me of Louis Sullivan's Student, where the student now has started to transform and to change. And at times the student is fearful, and at times the student takes some bold steps, and there's learning. And, I don't know, the parallels between the questions and answers, it just feels that kindergarten chats is very close to what is said in Bhagavad Gita. So thank you.
Thank you, Rupali. Up next, I have Jyoti, and if anybody else wants to speak, they can type exclamation point in the chat or raise your hand in Zoom.
Okay, Yogeshwar, you were talking about a karma done by a karma that is not a karma. So does it parallel the work that's done with resentment? Like you know, my children sometimes they will do something and I can sense some resentment, and I say, never do anything resentfully, just do it from your heart. Is that a concept in a karma, about a karma?
Well, normally we talk about doing actions from our heart, and you know how I have understood that concept is just doing things out of love. But what Krishna is talking about here is not any emotion like love, like doing things from your heart. Or it's not about any thought, like doing things thoughtfully. And it is not also about just doing them without thinking. Because normally when we think about, like, when we're not letting our actions move through our mind or move through our intellect, but just doing the actions, then we may feel that these actions are just without thought, like just do the action as it feels right. But any of that is not what Krishna is pointing towards. And when understanding Krishna, it is really important to first understand what he is not saying. Because to get to what he is saying, we first have to take down the notions of what we may think that he is saying. So he's not talking about any emotion, any thought, or just not doing it thoughtfully, just like doing it as it feels right. That's not what he's talking about. What he's talking about is doing it from the core of your being, like realize who you are apart from this identity that you've attached to, apart from the senses that you're attached to, apart from the manifest that you think yourself as. And then action will flow. That action, you will see, if I can describe it, it will have all the love, it will have all the thought that you can put in, it will have all that, because it's from the core of your being. So it's like unconditional love, unconditional thought, it's just all there, like all the qualities are there. And then you realize that there's something Krishna is saying that is not what I previously understood as unthoughtful action or emotional action or thoughtful action. It's just something beyond.
Thank you. That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti, and thank you, Yogeshwar. Up next, I have Shrikant, followed by Brian.
Thank you. This concept of akarma, the closest concept I've seen is in Tao Te Ching. It's called Wu Wei. It's kind of acting without acting. They kind of talk about, but it's all about saying, just things moving from the Tao itself. I wanted to follow up on Rupali's comment about kindergarten chats. The thing I want to focus on is that this is a conversation. Okay, this entire, Gita is a conversation between two consciousnesses. And it's the conversational nature is crucial because there is just so much love and respect between these two beings. And the matter is being presented not in an impersonal way, but as being addressed to this mind. And that mind has a mind of its own. He is asking questions. He is going through this entire process, and you see him kind of shift ever so gradually through all these stages as he goes on. So I think the fact that it is conversational is very, very deep, because it really, so it's not like, here is the knowledge, accept it. He's saying, talk to me. talk to nature, talk to Krishna, go back and forth. And all of that is good, to have a genuine desire. And Naneshwar, whenever he talks about this, he repeatedly talks about Krishna's delight with all the questions that Arjuna is asking, even when they seem to be challenging to what is being said. He is just delighted that Arjuna wants to know. More than anything, he wants to know. And he patiently explains things this way and that way to communicate. So the idea of it being conversation, I think, is very fundamental. Thank you.
Thank you, Shrikant. Up next, I have Brian.
I don't have anything substantive to add, but based on what, on the reading itself and what everyone has said, my sense is this is a really important moment in the Gita. I don't know what's coming up, but I feel like this is something of a real breakthrough moment, a turning point. And it's really profound that it just involves folding hands. So I just wanted to say that. I'm looking for, maybe you want to comment on whether this is that kind of a moment, but I wanted to share that.
Yogeshwar, did you want to comment?
So after this, like on verse 39, verse 40, we're going to realize how much like Arjuna is just bowing down. Like he's just saying Namo Namaste to Sahasra Kritva in verse 39. It's like, I can't only bow down once, but I'm continuously bowing down to him. And that is my nature. That's my swabhava. That's how I am. And when you interact with the ultimate, that is what happens. It's not something that you do, but it is happening. So it's just mentioned by Sanjaya here that Arjuna is doing this. But in Arjuna's words, we shall get the concept. We shall get more into it next time when we get into the verses that Arjuna is going to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Yogeshwar. Does anybody else have anything before we close out? If so, you can type exclamation point in the chat or raise your hand in Zoom. Shrikant.
Wonderful. So Evanik, if it's okay with you, once we close this, I want to bring back, I want to talk to people about my diagram, if anybody is interested.
Of course.
Okay. Yogeshwar, would you like to say anything, or shall I go to my diagram?
No, it's fine. You can go to your diagram.
Okay. So Yogeshwar, firstly, I want to tell you that I've learned so much from you on this chapter 10 and chapter 11. These two chapters in particular, I had not fully grasped their meaning. And I think you've kind of brought this out. And so thank you so much. So I've been working on my diagram for some time now. And I have a final version, not final version, but it's like intermediate final version. And I'm going to, afterwards I'll put it in the chat for you. Let me go ahead, just a second, give me a second. Let me go ahead and share the diagram. Okay. So we're talking about conversation, okay, the power of conversation. What I realized, so this is the diagram that I've ended up with after my encounter with Louis Sullivan, or the diagram's interaction with Louis Sullivan. Okay, for those who are new, this is a living center. You can think of yourself on the right-hand side here, okay? And so think of this one side as you, and this is the living center. This is the center of your being. This is your Atma. And this is the life which is being led in accordance with virtue, accordance with yogas. There are these 4 different yogas here. The action yoga over here, that is the karma yoga, the green one. The jnana yoga is the one over here, the blue one. Give me just a second. Okay, I want to make sure the sound is as good. Okay. The bhakti yoga is this one over here. And then the new one that I added finally was the dhyan yoga or raja yoga, which is about concentration. And you're using these 4 yogas together. I have come up with these other 4 intermediate things, which are kind of combination, which are kind of applications. So thought applied to action, leading to kind of productiveness, kind of scale of action, or thought or action shaped by your devotion, leading to love, your focus and your emotions trying to put together expressions of beauty. So I've tried to represent that. So that's what this diagram is about. The point I want to focus on is that I've been focusing on just one of these. And what I realized is that the conversation model is a fantastic way of thinking about yourself. So what we are seeing here is that this is Krishna-Arjun dialogue, right? So imagine Krishna is here on the left-hand side, okay? And Arjun is here. Or think of the most ideal person that you personally identify with, your hero. It could be Jesus, it could be Krishna, it could be somebody that you know, okay? What this allows you to do, this 2-fold way, is to distinguish yourself, see where you are and see what the ideal looks like. Jordan Peterson uses the term your future self. You can think of your future self. So much of the Gita is Arjun looking at Krishna, Krishna saying things to Arjun. These are expressions, but look at the gentleness with which Krishna says it. He has profound respect for the mind of Arjun. So even when he's saying things to Arjun, he's saying, don't take my words for it. Go back to your center and try to understand it from there. So another way of thinking about this diagram is that this is namaste. This is saying the God in you God in me greets the God in you. It is relating it, and it allows you to kind of step away from whatever it is that you are used to see things from this other perspective. And by doing that, you are able to see the common perspective, the Atma that is common between you and the other person, and try to come closer to the universal truths. Because one of the, all of us have the tendency of getting attached to the periphery. Now, the beautiful thing about authentically relating to another person, or authentically trying to say what Krishna is saying, or what Jesus is saying, what Tao Te Ching is saying, is that it is a different context. So you are able to see universal truths more easily because you're not distracted by just your own confirmation biases, your own being attached to your habits, your feelings, your thoughts, your relationships. So I find this conversational model to be a very powerful way of thinking about anything. And it is demonstrated very beautifully in Bhagavad Gita. It also is demonstrated beautifully in kindergarten chats. So especially people who are familiar with kindergarten chats. I don't know if Rupali is still here. If, let's see. If
Yep,
Rupali,
I'm still here,
yeah.
Shrikant.
What do you think about this idea of using, this idea of thinking about it in terms of conversations?
Yes, so first I will say your diagram is more dynamic. I feel like I'm looking at it and I feel like the wheels are turning, okay? Like there is that optical illusion, so to say, that there's a dynamism to it. And then, this diagram reminded me of the two spheres that you had shown a few months ago, where, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there are all these stars and you're in them, and it's how you interact with the world and how you interact with you and the periphery, or you and the world. And I feel this is, it kind of has the same idea that, yeah, that you are part of the world and you're part of existence. You're not alone. So how do you act in the periphery as well as keep your core? So I really like that. I like the fact about the conversation and dialogue. And the more I think of this and Bhagavad Gita and kindergarten chats, I just like, especially chapter 11, where Krishna is leading him all the way from chapter 2 to chapter 11. And then Arjun transforms. And I feel that's similar in kindergarten chats, where the teacher is leading and the teacher keeps saying that there's ferment here, there's things going to happen. And when you're ready, they will happen. And in chapter 11, Krishna says, look, I'll give you these eyes to see, which really means now you're ready, so when you're ready, you'll see. So I love this whole idea of the conversation and the two diagrams that you have. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Rupali. Next up is Joe. Folks, go ahead and type exclamation mark if you would like to comment.
I really like this diagram being used in this context, especially. Since we have the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, then you can say the actual movement of Arjuna to the center. And so that this is actually the great dialogue. You can almost do it progressive, like each chapter by chapter, if you really wanted to do it that way. It would be very interesting to see how that would, and then where you end up. It would be a really, actually, that would be a lot of work, but it would be very interesting. There's also, I like it on another level, was just in as far as dialogue and authentic relating. And it really can, and I was actually having a conversation with Evanique this morning about this. This idea that it can kind of show you where you are and in a conversation, and then where someone else is, so that this actually helps you kind of understand where each person's coming from, so that it really does help. There's a dialogue. It's dialectical, and since we do live in the world, it's a very, very powerful way of actually figuring out a way to clearly communicate with other people. And I mean, you can use this in a workplace or your personal relationships. So this is really this is pretty neat. But in the context of the Gita, I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, no, I really like your idea of trying to map chapter by chapter. because different chapters have different focus. There is a chapter, like for example, Sthita Prajna is all about describing the state of being here. Sthita, that means to stay steadily, the steady intelligence, the light of consciousness. So you are there at the center of this vortex. The vortex is running all around you, but you are not moved by it. It's like the unmoved mover remaining there. So it's and like, Karma Yoga chapters mostly focus on this. Then there is the question of Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga over here. So that's one way of just kind of trying to show what is being talked about. And then you can go back and forth of saying, what is Krishna saying and how does Arjun take this? You can see the devotion of Arjun towards his own truth. You can see the love, and you can see how they are reacting to each other. So absolutely, that would be a fun way. That would be, and I definitely want to do that for Gospel of John. That's a lot more easier than Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is far more complex to pull this off. But go ahead, Joe.
I guess the Gospel of John, you're just moving completely inward, right? Whereas the Gita will it's kind of like this, I don't know. You'll see
each of them. I mean, because it's a story, it's kind of, you can show it, but it's not a like Gospel of John is not a conversation.
Right. That's my point. Yeah.
So, but you can take a conversation like Jesus talking to
the woman from
Samaria, right? So she's saying, give me water. She's all talking about this. But he's talking about that I'll give you knowledge. And so it's really, really fascinating. So absolutely, would love to do that at some point.
Yeah, we should do that.
Second one is the point that you're making about how it can be useful. You can put anything on the other side. I always put myself on the right-hand side. The left-hand side goes, by the way, just at the kind of the brain structure, the left-hand side of your visual field goes to your right brain, and the right-hand side goes to your left brain. So if you want to think of possibilities, you should keep it on the left-hand side. So you always put the ideal, other people whom you do not, you know yourself better than other people. So you always put yourself here on the right, because that's more form, more kind of order territory, the known territory. Okay, this is the unknown. So you always put it on the left-hand side. And there you can put anything there. You can put the ideal. You can put Krishna here. You can put Jesus here. And you look at them from here, from this side. You look at their thoughts. You can see what your feelings are in response to that. So you can do, it doesn't have to be just thoughts to thoughts. It can be, what are their thoughts and what are your actions? What are the relationships between them? So you can take any of the aspects here and relate it to any of the aspects here. So it's a very detailed way of comparing and contrasting, seeing similarities and differences between where you are and where do you want to go. Like Jordan Peterson, you can use this as your future self. This is where you're trying to go. You map it out. You have a much more explicit way of saying, this is where I want to be. And then you ask yourself here, where am I right now? Now you're not limited by that. This exercise shows you that you have ability of growing, but the starting point is to always know where you are. What are you doing right? What are you doing wrong? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And it allows you to separately conceptualize your ideal. You can also put any other person here that you're interacting with and see what is going on with them. And then you can look at what kind of interaction is going on and to what extent you are actually getting what is going on in their core, and how, to what extent they are getting what is going on within your core. So you can do it that way. You can put like a company there, like your workplace here. You can put America here. You can look at modern times. You can look at like the scribal era. So you can put anything X here, and you can relate it to you. So it allows you to do this. This is a tool for doing this comparison. And what the whole purpose of it is to give you a better and better perspective on yourself. Because more you compare and contrast, it's not about putting yourself down and or saying how good I am. You're trying to say, what am I? Who am I? Where am I? And answering it as best as you possibly can. Next up is going to be Evanik.
Yeah, actually, Shrikant, you said a lot what I was going to say. I mean, not the exact same thing, but a lot of the concepts I had, because I was thinking you can use this for people that you particularly don't like. And I hate to use that term, but there's just no other way to say it. And it could help you see, one, if you're interacting with them from your periphery or from the center, right? And then you could get to the bottom of why you don't like this person. I'm not talking about someone who does something to you like deliberately to hurt you. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about somebody that may just rub you the wrong way, and you can't particularly identify why. Like they haven't really done anything to you, or maybe they just said something you didn't like, but that's not particularly like a great reason as to why you don't like them, or you don't care for them, or you don't care to interact. So I think, or even if your interactions with this person is not great. So what you could do is you could just use this as like the right hand being yourself and the left hand as being them, and see how you're interacting with them. Are you interacting from your feelings, from your attentions, from your expressions, or are you interacting with them from the center? And I think that could improve relationships, in particular relationships that don't particularly work very well. And I think so. I think this, like you said, you could put anything in it, but I just wanted to add that perspective of putting in there, someone that, particularly you don't particularly care for, and then seeing how you can at least improve that relationship if it's possible.
No, absolutely. Great point. I mean, another way of putting it, if I wanted to draw this, is that let's say that you are somebody who's very emotional, intuitive. So you're very close to the center over here. Okay. Don't know whether this is, let me use some color which is brighter. Okay. So suppose you're you're like this, closer to the center over here. So you're doing bhakti yoga, you're doing dhyana yoga, you're focused internally, but you're not as focused on doing things in the world, thinking explicitly. So you're kind of like this. Okay, I'm just exaggerating here. So you're not particularly good at jnana yoga, particularly good at karma yoga. Okay, whereas they are really good at doing things and thinking explicitly about things, but they are not very good in terms of being very loving, strong heart, kind of acting from their heart, intuitive. Suppose they are like this. Okay. Then just by kind of identifying that this person is focused this way, I'm focused this way. Firstly, just identifying that removes the anger. You're saying that no, they are not trying to hurt me. They're just operating like that. So it's, and then you understand, okay, given that they are operating like that, how do you interact with them? So then you choose the ways of interacting, which would be not something that would come naturally to you, but you can say, oh, this interaction actually is going to be a very effective way of interacting with them. So this is, another way, we've looked at like Jung's cognitive functions. That would be another way of looking at the same thing. So these 8 things just map directly into Jung's functions of thinking. So this is thinking, this is feeling, this is intuition, and this is sensing. So it gives us really powerful tools of understanding and dealing with other people. Absolutely. Just a second. Let me go ahead and remove this. Sorry about this. All right. Let me close this one. Okay. All right. Excellent. So thank you very much, everybody. This was great, but I wanted to just show you this diagram. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to put this diagram in the chat so you can go ahead and start looking at it. My email address is 52livingideas@gmail.com. So if you have any comments about this diagram, go ahead and you can send it to me at 52livingideas@gmail.com. Just putting this in the chat. Give me a second from my computer. Just a second there. Okay. All right. I have put it in the chat. So anybody who wants to, download the diagram, do so now. Just click on it and you'll be able to save it to your computer. And I have moved to the phase from working on improving the diagram to now seeing how to use it. So anything that you can share with me about what you find useful about it, about using this diagram, I would really love to hear. That's what I'll be working on for the next 2 weeks as I'm traveling. And then we will continue back on. So just want to tell you that don't miss tomorrow's Gita meetups. So see you back again. And then next week is going to be a lighter schedule. I've got meetups on Wednesday about Mike is doing a meetup on technology. How do you use it so that it is beneficial to you, and how do you stop it from hurting you? On Thursday, we're going to do a Gita meetup. I don't think we'll do a Gita meetup on Friday, but the week after that, it's going to be a full week of meetups. All right. So just wanted to give you a heads up. And thank you very much. Thank you, Yogeshwar. And thank you, everybody. See you folks soon. Bye, everybody. And thank you, Evanik. You are a great moderator.
Thank you.
Doesn't everybody agree?
She's
What
a
do you think?
pro.
What's that?
I was going to say that actually. I was going to. That was the original reason I put my exclamation point in the chat.
Okay.
Like we started the diagram. I just want to make sure I got the diagram. Okay.
Did you want to say so?
Wonderful. Connie, you were saying something?
Oh, I didn't realize I'm off mute. Oh, just Evanik just did just wonderful. This was great. So I forgot I was off mute.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.